Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for taking the time out of your afternoon to attend our webinar. My name is Lisa, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Content. Content is everywhere. We see it in newspapers, on TV, on our phones, in our day-to-day businesses. And while content is everywhere, it is often one of the most underutilized items for businesses in their digital space. Why? Because it easily gets put in the too hard basket. It's hard to sit and write something. It's hard to put a webinar together. It's too hard to take a review and copy and paste it onto my website. But more often than not, the actual root cause of this is knowing what to focus your attention on when it comes to content. That's why today's topic is so critical in your business's success in the content space: how to create smart digital content. Today's speaker has a phenomenal amount of digital experience and is hugely passionate in helping businesses succeed in the online world. It is my pleasure to introduce Agency Director, Jara Borman. Having had a sneak peek at today's webinar presentation, I can tell you that you are in for a treat. Jara is sharing key elements to nailing smart digital content and providing some tips to get you started. For a little bit of just our normal housekeeping, so we will be recording this webinar, so if you miss any part of it or you want to just take a second look, it will be up on our YouTube channel later today. Also, at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and post those through to us. And if they're relevant at the time, we'll bring them up. Otherwise, we will save them for our question session at the end. Also, if you can't quite hear this or anything I've just said, the audio settings are down in the bottom left-hand corner. So right now, I do wish you all enjoy today's session, and I will invite Jara to take us through from here.
Well, thanks very much, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be here today and have a chat to you about how to create smart digital content. Now, digital content is such a big topic. It's quite hard to approach and work out how to really get started and how to get some really good traction out of it, as Lisa suggested at the start of today's session. So we're going to go through a few things today. Hopefully this will give you some tips and tricks on how to approach digital content and make sure that, most importantly, you're getting a good return on investment from any kind of activity that you do in this space. So to start with, we're going to talk about strategy and how to create value. We're going to talk about some attributes that you need with all of the content that you create, the 3 S's. So we'll go into that shortly. You want to make your content evergreen where possible. That just allows you to make the most out of that content. How to repurpose instead of republish. I'll go into detail on that. How to use content to create credibility. That's really critical. We'll talk a little bit about video and how important that is in terms of a content type, how to create content around staff, and a little bit about how you get people's attention. All right, and then just some detail on how to extend your reach with paid advertising, which is pretty important if you go to the effort of making some content. So let's get started with strategy and value, right? What is important here is that before you start creating content, you do need to understand how people buy from you. And that is traditionally viewed as a buying funnel. Right? People go through this process of becoming aware of your product, becoming interested in it, considering buying it, the intent to buy, evaluation of who they're going to buy it from, and then a purchase process. So understanding that process and what that means for your product and service is critical when it comes to creating content. And the reason for this is that content plays a role in actually helping people progress through this buying funnel. And so your content should be designed to strategically help people along their journey or their buying process here. So content, if you create content and it doesn't align with your strategy, it adds little value and really just doesn't help with sales, which ultimately is what you want to get out of any content that you create. Sure, you might get a few likes out of a funny cat picture or video by posting that to your social media, but it's not going to progress anyone through this buying process. And so it's not going to add any strategic value to your organization. So content must be developed so that it provides a real solution to real problems, right? It has to provide new information that will help your customers accomplish something and bring a resolution to a pressing predicament. Essentially, you want to solve a problem for them. You want to show them how your product and service can add value to them in their life. So when we're talking about the value that it creates, it's the value that it creates in your potential customer's mind. right? Very critical. So you've got to ask yourself these questions when creating content. Who are you trying to reach? Who are you trying to talk to? All right, this should line up very nicely with who you sell to as a business. It should meet your buyer personas, should be incorporated into any content development strategy. What online platforms that you're looking to use to target, right? So where are your customers? You want to go out and reach them. Are they on Instagram? Are they spending all their time on YouTube? You want to understand these sort of things before you get started. Otherwise, you can spend a lot of time and money creating content that doesn't reach your target audience because you haven't stopped to consider that element. All right. Then what formats do people expect to see? Obviously, if you're doing YouTube, you want to be making sure you've got video content, pretty straightforward. But yeah, you want to be thinking these things through right up front. What problem will you solve through the content that you create? And how does this address your customers' pain points? All right. And how will your content, this is probably the most critical thing, how will it create and move your customers along their buying journey? Let me give you a quick example. If people are right at this evaluation stage, they've already made a decision to buy your product and service. They are actually just considering who they buy it from. At that point in time, the most important pieces of content that you need to have available are trust building. Pieces of information that answer the question of why someone should buy from you. These are really important things like testimonials, case studies, product demonstrations, and potentially reviews and maybe your About Us page as well. These sort of items, which are generally found on a website, are designed to help people right down the bottom of this buying funnel. When they've probably decided they already want to buy, they're just trying to decide who they buy it from. And so creating content often starts here so that you maximize your return on those customers who are, or potential customers who are already ready to buy. All right, and then you can start to work up through some of these other stages and try to stimulate demand with some smart content, maybe some video content, that sort of thing. So strategically, this is where you want to be thinking and designing your content strategy. So let's start going through some more detail. All content that you create should follow the 3 S's. Be searchable, shareable, and snackable. So what do I mean by that? Well, all content that you create needs to be indexable and able to be found when people start looking for it or searching for it. So it needs to have the right tags, it needs to have the right descriptions and keywords incorporated into the descriptions and titles so that when that content is indexed, potentially on YouTube or even on Facebook, that people can find it when they are trying to search for that product or service you provide, or even if it's a how-to guide. I remember recently I bought an electric lawnmower and I started doing a bunch of research in different places, and there were a couple of firms that had really great video guides on what different types of lawnmowers or electric lawnmowers did, and their content was very easy to find, and it really did help me along that buying process because I started to understand the requirements that I actually had, so therefore could buy a lawnmower in confidence. And so you want to make sure that the content you create is easily indexable, has the right tags so that people can find it, because there's nothing worse than creating some great content and it just disappearing into oblivion because no one could find it. So that's your first S, make it searchable. Second is make it shareable. Right? If people enjoy your content and then can share it to others, your reach expands potentially exponentially. So you really want to make sure that it's very easy for people to hit a share to social media button or to email it to someone, even to themselves, so that they can store that information for later. So really critical that shareability is a big part of any piece of content that you create. And then snackable. So what do I mean by snackable? Most people have a very short attention span when it comes to being online. I'm not accusing anyone here of having a short attention span, because you're all here for a webinar for maybe 30 minutes. That's a pretty good attention span. Hopefully I can hold your attention during that time. But what I mean by this though, is when people are online, they are presented with an inordinate amount of information. It's coming at them from left and right and all over the place. There's pop-ups here. If they're on social media, there's videos auto-playing. So you actually have a very small amount of time to make an impression on people. So it's very important that your content is easy for people to consume, that it's digestible, or what we would call snackable. It means it's relatively short, it has high value, and it's easy for someone to get the key information out of your piece of content very quickly without having to struggle, spend large amounts of time invested in just trying to get to the bottom of what you're saying. So that's very, very important, because then it allows people to absorb the information much more easily. So these are 3 key attributes to any content that you create. Next, try to make it evergreen. So what do I mean by this? If you've gone to the effort of creating a piece of content that's very time specific, you may only be able to use that once. right? So what we mean by evergreen is making content that's able to be used over a longer period of time. This will ensure that the topic, maybe it comes around every year, or can be used all year round. When you're first starting content, it's really important to build up a database of information that's not time specific, so that you get a really good return on investment on that piece of content that you've developed. And that will ensure that as you build up large volumes of content, a whole lot of it's not becoming irrelevant. So the benefits of evergreen content is that it can be relevant for a long period of time, and it can start to generate substantial amounts of traffic. All right, some really good how-to guides, that sort of thing. Some of those are indexed very well on Google, and when people are starting to search for questions around a product or service, that can make a really good, strong impression on people. All right, and it can get some good traffic volumes too. It's a great resource for backlinks. If you're posting great pieces of content to other sites that link back to you, that's called a backlink, and that can be really valuable for helping you rank in your own right. Higher search engine ranking is available for those for evergreen content, and because it's not time sensitive. And as I mentioned before, you'll get a higher return on investment from this type of content as opposed to time specific content. All right. It builds brand authority as the other item as well. Some examples of some great evergreen content. I already mentioned this. How-to guides are really, really good. We are finding more and more people are searching on Google with full questions. In fact, a couple of years ago, Google actually rebuilt its entire search algorithm to understand natural language search, because it found that people were actually asking longer and longer search queries of Google. Essentially 1 in 5 searches on Google has never seen before. What that says is people are not just asking keyword plus keyword of Google, they're asking whole sentences and whole questions. And so Google accommodates that with its search algorithm, and you should be too when you're generating content. You should be asking yourself, what questions are my audience or my potential customers asking? And then writing specific content that looks to address those questions. It will ensure that you become front of mind or potentially show up on Google when people ask that question of Google. A great example of this would be with a client that I work with who sells swimming pools, and their question is, how much does a pool cost? Having a question like that answered and having that information indexed on Google is incredibly valuable. So how-to guides are very, very good. Tutorials are great as well. Tips on how to develop or work with your product or service, testimonials that should read, and checklists, and a history of maybe your product and service is really good as well. Curated lists, encyclopedic or Wikipedia entries are very powerful as well. All right, so that's a little bit about evergreen content, just making sure that as you strategically start to look at what content to develop, you're making sure that you are able to use it over a longer period of time as a good takeaway from that. Now, once you start to create content and publish it, you have lots of different channels which you can deliver your content to people. You could have a blog, you could have an email marketing, you could have social media. And the more of these channels that you have, the more important this point becomes. You don't want to just republish the same content to every single channel. You want to repurpose that content. So adjust it, change it up, maybe change the design and so on, so that you're still using the same base content, but you're just changing the way that it's formatted so that you don't actually penalize people who are subscribing to multiple channels of yours. If you have a great customer, they visit your website, they check out your how-to articles, potentially they're on your email marketing list or social media. If you just hammer them with exactly the same thing all across one day, you might start to get some unsubscribes happening as well. So you want to make sure you don't penalize those people who are really invested in your business, or those customers that are very invested in your business and are subscribing to multiple channels. Right, so by repurposing content, you actually save a bit of time and money because you're not having to create from scratch on each of those channels, and it lets you reach lots of people through multi-channel marketing. But as I said, it doesn't penalize those people. It's really good for SEO to make sure you're using lots of channels to get your content out, and it allows you to reach a wider audience. And it saves time and resources as well by not doing it from scratch. Okay, so this is the critical thing. Once you've got that content created, make sure you've got a really great syndication model for getting that content out, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. This is critical. If you're just starting out creating content, then the first content you should be building is content to create credibility. All right, this is what allows people to understand why they should choose you, and it also builds trust. It also reduces risk as well. So when most people are considering buying from an organization, they have a bit of a scale going on in their head, right? And if you can build trust and reduce risk and tip that scale, that is essentially the mechanism that you want to influence that will get them to contact you or purchase your product, right? If you're thinking about it in that way, that everyone that's there that maybe visits your website, there is intent to buy, or otherwise they wouldn't be there in the first place, right? So you need to create enough credibility, build enough trust, reduce enough risk to tip that scale and get them to get in touch with you. And so that's what we're talking about here. So the first content you should create is around building credibility. It's about showing off your expertise, your integrity, talking to your potential customers and showing them why they should use you. Case studies, testimonials, and even reviews are brilliant for this. So if you don't have case studies and testimonials, this is probably some of the first digital content that you should be creating, because it's going to have a very big impact on your trust and credibility and subsequently your ability to convert customers online. All right, so that's a really great starting point for people. All right, now videos. Let's talk about videos. Videos are phenomenal. All right, videos are the most engaging content that there is online. According to HubSpotters, we've got some detail here. Adding a video to a landing page can boost conversion by 80%. That's phenomenal. All right, so if you're going to go to the effort of creating some content, creating some videos can actually have a huge impact. Social media today says 92% of mobile video users share videos with others, which is great. That allows you that shareable piece that we were talking about before. And in a busy digital environment, creating video content is one of the most effective ways to capture your customers' attention and get ahead of the competition. More so than that, you'll find that most algorithms that control news feeds, for example, in social media, prioritize video content. So just the very nature of that content type ensures that you actually reach more people. So not only is it more engaging, it also will extend your reach just by its very nature. All right. One thing to keep in mind here, though, is that the powerful benefits video. Let's talk through this. So it improves conversion and sales, encourages engagement, and boosts your visibility through SEO as well. You've got to remember that Google also owns YouTube, and so is quite invested in video. And so having YouTube videos embedded on your website, shared through social media, have a very big impact on your authority with Google, and therefore your organic or search engine optimization based rankings in Google. Right? And it does cultivate trust as well. One thing that's really critical to understand is that most video is consumed without audio. So subtitles are a must. A webinar like this, we're assuming most people are tuning in and listening, but if you're scrolling through social media, you'll notice that most of the videos that you consume don't actually have the sound turned on, and so those subtitles become incredibly important. Right, that's a little bit about video. Can't stress enough, if you're able to make video and get those subtitles on, this is one of the things that really helps. It's also a really great top of the funnel technique. So when we look back at that buying journey, right up there in awareness, if people aren't aware of your product and you need to generate awareness for it, a video is a great way to engage people when they're not already invested in or have intent to buy at this stage. So video is a great tool for getting some really good reach and engaging people and starting them down that buying process. It also has that benefit based on this figure here as well, of actually helping conversion at those later stages, but it becomes even more important in the early stages. So create content around staff. So one of the things that I always surprises me is people's about us and team pages. These are pages that are often not done well, and probably one of the biggest opportunities for most businesses. We actually measure what happens on the Zealed website, where people go to. People tend to arrive on our website already knowing a little bit about what we do. So they don't tend to actually head to our website design, our integration or automation pages. They actually go through and start reading the About Us and the team pages. And that's so we see them as being such a critical part of the conversion process, because that's where a lot of our traffic goes. So this is personal experience. So what we suggest is that you actually do create a lot of content around staff. Introduce your staff members to your audience, maybe some information about their organization and the role, their quirks, hobbies, interests, how much of a valuable asset that they are to your team. Remember, we're building trust and credibility here. People buy from people. So if someone's arrived on your website or interacting with you on social media and started to get a sense of what you provide, the why they should buy from you is the next question they're going to have. And this helps answer that. And so give your potential customers a sneak peek of what happens behind the scenes, maybe something about your process, something about how the team work together. These sort of things will help create a real persona and help encourage people to buy from you. All right, puts a face on your organization and shows your customers that there's actually real people behind the brand. All right, in fact, the reverse is true as well. If you're looking to buy off a website and there's no about us, there's no history, there's no people, I'd start to question that a little bit, and I'd be a bit more concerned about buying from a website like that, because I wouldn't know if it was trying to scam me or not. So just to give you an idea of what you're doing there, is you're reducing that risk and you're building that trust, as I was talking about before. You have 3 seconds to grab people's attention. All right, maybe I should have used this slide right up the front. So this is critical, right? If you're going to create a video, or you're going to create a landing page with a whole bunch of content on it, or you're going to create a how-to guide article, this is something you need to keep in mind, no matter what type of content you're creating. All right, you've got 3 seconds, right? What you need to be considering here is that you're buying someone's attention. So right up front, you've got to create enough value to exchange for their attention so that they will continue to watch your video or read your article. All right, so it's got to be compelling and persuasive right up front. And so here's some tips to grab people's attention. Ensure that the captivating visuals are in your content that grabs people's eyes. Short, catchy headlines that explain what it is that you're going to tell them about. Personalizing your content, making it engaging, keeping it simple, and choose genuinely interesting topics and trends. I would go one step further and just say you want to front load your content, right? What I mean by that is, if you've got a killer piece of information that you're trying to get across, don't bury that in the fifth paragraph, or maybe 45 seconds in on your video. People are not going to get that far unless you've used that killer piece of content to get their attention and then provide them more detail. So wherever possible, find out what that most valuable part of your content is and bring it forward as far as possible, so that you're essentially exchanging that for someone's attention to watch or read the rest of the article. Once you've gone through this process and you've created some really powerful content, maybe it's a case study, maybe it's a video, all these sort of things, you then need to really start looking at how are you going to get this out in front of people, because that's where you start to get your greatest return on investment and start to move people through that buying process that we talked about earlier. So promoting your content through paid channels will widen your reach, and it will allow you to really target the people the content is designed for. Social media is fantastic for this. It gives you the ability to target based on demographic, age, socioeconomic status, all sorts of things, even down to relationship status. So I was talking to a suit hire company, and they were running campaigns in Facebook specifically targeted to people that were in the engaged status, because they thought that weddings were being planned, right? So you can do some amazing targeting with social media, but there's no point doing it unless you've got some really good content to serve to people, because that is ultimately what's going to create that positive momentum through the buying funnel. All right, so don't be afraid of spending money to get reach, and do that through maybe boosted posts or structured social media campaigns, or even buying an email marketing campaign from a third party. All of these sort of things are really powerful. However, they don't work unless you've got the content that is required to create that momentum. Right. Yeah, I think that's pretty much what I've covered there. So focus on quality. If you're going to actually pay for advertising to extend the reach of your content, make sure it's really good quality content that strategically aligns really well with your objectives, and so is likely to have a great positive impact on your business. Right? Just buying reach just for the sake of it's not necessarily the best way to go. So that's another great tip for you. So here's my expert tip, kind of covering off what we've talked about. Start with content that answers the why you question, right? If you haven't really got started in this space, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, why would someone buy from you? If you can answer that question, that should form the basis of any initial content, and that can take the form of building trust building activities such as the About Us page, testimonials, case studies. These are the sort of things that you really need to be getting right up front, and will generally be evergreen and give you the greatest return on investment. And so there you go. That's our topic for today. questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Jara. So yeah, now we're moving into our question segment. So please feel free to use that question and answer button down the bottom to ask. We did have a question. What
Yes.
do you mean when you say oh gosh, can't say this word, encyclopedic content as
So just
evergreen content?
Yeah, just so the best way to think about it is Wikipedia, right? So if you're thinking about more like an encyclopedia content, it's more of a historical fact and maybe your history, that sort of thing. And so every organization, it's free. You should probably submit a Wikipedia article telling the story about your business, where it came from, and what it is, what sort of impact that you're having on the world. That sort of content is really easy to get published. Wikipedia, for example, is just a phenomenal website and gets a lot of views and also generates lots of little rich snippets across the internet. So that information is used quite widely. So that's what I'm talking about with that sort of content. Maybe write the history of your organization and submit it to Wikipedia.
Awesome, thanks, Jar. And Emma's just asked, so when creating a Facebook post, e.g. a testimonial quote, should I put the text into the image or into the caption?
Oh, great question. So I'd put the text into the caption rather than into the image. Just makes it easier to be read. One thing I'd go further is if you were actually creating a testimonial, I'd probably post that onto your website first and then just share that page through social media with some commentary around it as well. The more content that you can have in a controllable space that you own, like a website, the better it's going to be for your organic rankings. And so the more natural traffic you'll get. So that's a good way to work those two together.
No, that is really good. Just to carry on with another question under social media as well. So
Yep.
I'm currently posting lots to social media, but don't really do much on my website. How do I get the two working together?
Great. So that kind of leads in from where I was going before. So ultimately, your website itself is a great place to house all of your content. It's where you have all your controllable elements. It's where you can create call to actions, conversion pathways, and you've got full control over that. Whereas you're quite limited in social media in terms of how you can structure your content. So the reason that I'm raising this is because first and foremost, you should be posting as much content as you can to your own website first so that you're given the benefit from it as the originator of the content. Then you share that out through social media. And what that creates is an inbound marketing strategy. So people will interact with you on social media, right? They'll see your post, they'll engage with it. And if they're then interested in taking it further, they leave that social environment and go through into a more business environment, which is your website, where they consume the rest of the content. And then there is a natural progression through into a sales pathway on your website, or at least there should be.
Cool. No, sounds great. Just because it's still social media and we'll stick on that line right
Sure.
now. So Emma's just come back with, she's read that Facebook's algorithm works better for video posted directly to Facebook rather than through a third party like HubSpot. Is that true? And how much difference does it make to the algorithm posting through HubSpot?
Yeah, so video does change it up a little bit, right? So video posted directly to Facebook does tend to get better reach. That's because Facebook can autoplay it within a Facebook feed.
That's right.
What you've got to remember here is Facebook's objective is to get people to stay on its feed for as long as possible. That's how Facebook makes money, right? So anything that benefits Facebook by getting people to stay longer in their feed, they're going to prioritize. That's their objective. That's their intent, right? So if there is a video that's posted directly to Facebook so that they can control the autoplay features and things like that, which you can't necessarily do if you've embedded it elsewhere and links to it, then Facebook's going to prioritize it. All right.
Okay, that's great. Now, we've had a question. So what do you mean by personalizing content?
Personalize, well, it's creating content that actually personalizes you or creates a persona for you, right? What you're doing is you're trying to make people see you as a real person online. It's kind of quite difficult, right? So if you think about it in terms of a traditional retail arrangement, when you walk into a shop, someone can greet you, say hello, maybe even shake your hand. There's this personal interaction. You immediately see the person that you're potentially buying from as a person. Online, you don't have that, right? So you go to a website, it's quite impersonal. So you want to create content that personalizes the experience for somebody. So they know that they're buying from a person. They can see where that person came from, what their history is. It's kind of like the digital proxy for shaking someone's hand, if that makes sense.
Definitely very important for About Us, that side of it. You know,
Very much.
people want to know who they're buying from, not just what they're
Mm.
buying.
Yep.
Cool. Now, Ingrid's asked, so is there assistance to make these great ideas a reality? They're currently working with us, which is great, Ingrid,
Great.
but quite far through down the line. So how do we connect with these ideas as they've not sort of covered them yet to date?
Yeah, so content is often like once you've got the basic structure of how you approach things online. So you need your website, your social media page, and things like that. Without knowing the project specifically that you're working with us on, Ingrid, imagine you may have engaged us with some of those earlier pieces. Once you've got those sorted, then we can certainly help with developing the right content and especially syndicating that content as well. So we've got some specialists in the area of social media campaign management, Google, and also email marketing as well. So we can certainly help you develop content and refine it to the right formats, and then also work out how to syndicate it so that people interact with it, engage with it, and then come back into that website environment where there's the opportunity to convert. So if you are interested in understanding how we can support you there a little bit more, we do have a free strategy session, which you may have taken advantage of already. It doesn't mean we can't do it again with some new objectives there as well. So just reach out, let us know, we can help you that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, it is always first get your website up. Don't let this kind of stuff stop you. You know, get your website
Correct.
up or get your Facebook page up. Get that presence up first. Then
Yeah.
look at this as a refinement. You know what Google loves? Google loves you updating content. So the more you're updating or adding or changing, all of that, you know, the better Google's going to look at that for ranking. But, you know, I obviously primarily get the website up or get those initial changes you might need. You might already have a website, but you've changed to offering products instead of, you know, just you have to come to us for a quote. So yeah, get those key things out of the way first as always.
Yeah, you need those foundational items to be able to really work in the space properly. So
yeah, no, definitely. And look, we'll just kick into one last question. So
okay.
would you consider reviews to be content?
Yeah, absolutely. So reviews are like they're just such a great trust building piece. Even, and I've got to say this, even if it's a negative review, so long as you've responded professionally and you know, acknowledged potentially the issue that the person's raised, and given them some sort of recourse to talk with you directly to resolve those issues. Those sort of things are really important to help build trust and credibility, show you as a person, right? So it's those sort of things I'd say are critical pieces of content, but it's really important that you're doing two things. One is that you're answering all reviews, positive and negative. You should be giving some response to those, because what that does is it shows that you're active and that you care, right? And that builds a really great first impression with people, which is often where they'll first see you, maybe through Google reviews or something like that. Secondly, you need to be asking people for reviews. Most people that are asked for a review are actually happy to do it. They just don't think about it, right? So unfortunately, what happens is you only get people that have got a negative thing to say actually go in and review, unless you're actually reminding people that are having a great experience to go and review. They're probably not going to think about it. So that's my two tips for that, for handling reviews, is making sure you answer them, and also encouraging people to make them, all right? But yeah, incredibly powerful from a trust building point of view, which is one of the key strategies for content.
Awesome, thanks so much. So what we'll do is we'll just run into the overview for today's webinar. Oh, haven't presented yet. So yes, so basically let's recap. So what we know is content is one of the most powerful ways to engage in the digital space. And what the opportunity currently is that the fact that it is underutilized, so it's actually an easier way to put yourself ahead of your competitors. And it's often something that you can do in a simple way, or you can be quite advanced in it, but making a little bit of progress is better than nothing. The prediction is businesses that embrace content, so updating it, sharing it, repurposing it, that will assist with their transformation in the digital space more. And then my recommendation is keep in mind snack size. So not only when you're creating your content to keep it snack size, but also when setting aside time to do it. Start with 1 hour a fortnight, you know, and get really focused on it within that hour. Make a small change or some update in the content space, and then just see how it evolves over time. It's always hard to get started, but once you do, it becomes part of your daily business. And across to you, Jar.
Cool. So just a little bit about Zealed. There's probably a lot of people that have attended today already have heard of us or worked with us before. But just to recap, we've been helping businesses with their digital transformation for just on 20 years. It's our goal to help digitally transform New Zealand businesses with our range of websites, digital marketing, automation, and integration services. That's one of the reasons why we launched and continue to run our Get e-commerce movement. Applications are open for this. Businesses can apply for a free e-commerce website setup. The offer also comes with a 12-month zero-rated hosting arrangement, with the only charge being a 2% success fee. And so we're continuing to offer that if we've got solutions available for retail businesses, food and beverage, and we actually have an offer coming option for charities being released shortly too. So if you know anyone that wants to start selling online, get them to register at zeal.com. Even if they're outside of those initial sectors that we're covering, it's really good that people apply and express their interest. It'll help us determine which other vertical industries we start to look at and support through that initiative. Zealed has also been approved to provide services to small to medium businesses through the Regional Business Partner Program. So you could get up to $4,000 worth of funding through this program. If you'd like to know more about this, please ask for a consultation with Zealed so we can provide the detail that you need to take advantage of this. You can let us know that through the feedback form that we will be sending out later on today. I do encourage you to give us some feedback. We really like to hear what you have to think about the sessions that we're doing through the webinar program, and also maybe give us some guidance on what sort of topics you'd like to see in the future. Speaking of topics in the future, our webinar next Wednesday is the 12th of August, obviously. This session will be on how to evolve your social commerce strategy. You can register for this at our website, zeal.com. A special thanks to our moderator today, Lisa. Fantastic as always. Thank you very much. And that is all the time we have for, folks. If you know anyone that might benefit from attending these webinars in the future, we run them weekly. Please feel free to share the register link on our website. I wish you a good day and good luck.
Thanks to yourself too, Jar.
Cool. Thanks.